Sound check. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thanks.
I'm going to start the streaming. Oh, it's already going. All right, good.
Yeah, I'm still getting ready here. I'll be with you in a moment. Sound check. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Thanks. That's the stream going. The stream's coming through your mic.
I'm here,
Thank you.
Ginger.
Okay, the stream is on. Can anyone else hear it? I'm not hearing anyone.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Diane.
Okay.
Ricardo's on mute. Heidi, Linda, Crystal.
Can you hear?
Unmute. Yes, now I can hear you. And I think we're all here.
There's only 4 of us tonight. I know
Let's see.
Glenn's out.
Yeah, Glenn's out, but everyone else should be here. Is Ricardo, Crystal, Heidi. Oh, we're meeting, Jason is who we're missing. Okay.
All right. Well, we can roll. All right. All right. As you all probably figured out by now, Glenn is away. So I'll roll through the agenda. Roll call is Heidi, Bill, Crystal, and Ricardo. Jason and Glenn are absent. And guess we'll do the usual flag salute. All right, number 2, 1.2.
Yep.
All right, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that is done. Board vacancy, so we're at 1.3, school board vacancy, position 5. The application procedure is posted. Deadline is December 7th for our December board meeting, business meeting. And has anyone applied yet?
We have one applicant.
Oh, could have did this faster.
No question.
Okay. Question, Ricardo.
Diane, I was told that they couldn't find it on the website.
Do you have a name?
I do. If you can send it to me, I'll send it to that person. The
I
link.
found it on the website.
Is it?
Yeah,
have it.
it's at the very bottom of the main page. You have to scroll all the way down to the bottom.
Oh, okay. All right.
And the link
I'll
wasn't
send
working
it
for
to
me at
you,
first,
though.
but then it started working, right?
All right. But if Diane can send me the link, appreciate it.
I will.
All right.
I'll
Thank you.
send that to you.
Thanks.
Okay, very good. All right. I'm going to ask a general question for everybody. We're on to board work session. I know 2A is the operating agreement review, and board B is the board setting, and plan C is plan development. We do have under D and E are some OSBA policies. D we need to get done because it's now a rule from directive from ODE that we do these policies. OSBA has put out these policies. So the question I have for everybody is, you want to roll through the policies first and then start a discussion on our goals and everything else, or do you want to do the goals first and then the policies? Any thoughts? Open floor.
I'm okay with doing the policies first.
Me too. That's why I bring it up, obviously.
Me too.
Anybody against doing the policies first? All right, taking that, I'm going to take us to 2D and 2D and E. So let's start with 2D, which is the all students belong. This is a temp rule coming out of ODA. They're supposedly going to have a permanent rule for all students belong in March, but the part of that rule is that all school boards have to pass policies based on this rules by January 1st. So for us, that would be a reading now, followed by discussion. So what I'd like to do is just mention on some of these policies have been in public discussion. And is everybody familiar with these policies now? Any questions on these policies discussion?
I had my hand up, but I'll go ahead and unmute
Oh,
my.
sorry. Hold on. I got to figure out.
Oh, I see it now. Thank you, Crystal. Sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, I can see it now too. Ha.
That's
All
okay.
right.
Hey,
All right.
can we share the screen when we're reading these policies for the people watching online, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
Let's go with, well, let's start with the ODE news release. So we'll just do them in order as on the agenda on 1D. So
Perfect.
the first one is the ODE news release. Can we
Great.
share that, Ginger? Okay, let me get out of full screen mode so I can see people's hands. Okay, good. So all students belong, again, a rule coming out of Oregon Department of Education, flowed from the state school board. Temporary administration rule, but expected to be permanent in March. These ban such symbols, and the examples of the symbols are the noose, the swastika, Confederate flag, but it's not limited to that. You can see Colt Gill, director of ODE, has a statement at the bottom there for those symbols. The symbols, my feedback to this when they gave an initial review for OSBA board directors to look at was that for political speech and servicing or not servicing, sorry, that's the wrong word, display out there, these rules were there, but it also needed to remain in curriculum of learning about the history of things, and that is built into the rules. So in proper context of teaching history and social studies kind of things, these items can be discussed, but they're not to be used for just open public display anywhere on school property. Then the second item in our agenda is the model policy coming from OSBA, which is ACB. Oh, sorry. I guess there's a summary. If we go down to 2D, the second item is a summary from OSBA. Can we look at the summary? Okay, so here is the summary now of the interpretation of ACB and ACBAR from OSBA.
Oh, Crystal's hands up, just so
Oh,
you know.
sorry. Yep, so I see it now. Crystal. Or is that still up?
That was me forgetting to put it down. So you're good.
Okay, got it. Okay, and this just discusses that it's coming from, it'll be reported with Division 22 in OAR Chapter 581. This is a requirement for all districts and ESDs and public charter schools to be in compliance and have a policy on this. The basic background, again, in this summary showing previous incidences, presence will cause substantial disruption to educational environment, and these symbols interfere with students' rights to be secure and let alone in their schools. And then there's just talking about the logistics of it down below. Questions on the OSBA summary of the rules? Okay, and there's a listing of what we're doing. So, got a hand up from Heidi.
Yeah, I don't know if this is if this is where we want to discuss this ACB, if we want to discuss this policy now,
Yep.
or are we just,
Let's bring it up. Yep, but we're going to do it for first reading. So next item on the agenda to show, Ginger, is the actual ACB policy.
okay, well, while she's bringing that up, I have it up on my screen. So I just kind of wanted to address it.
Mhm.
It states, okay, that we have some definitions of what
Mhm.
visitors, employees, and students are entitled to. And then we talk about a bias incident. And I understand that this is a new, term that most of us aren't familiar with, but I know it's out there and used frequently. My concern about this, and I, first of all, I realize we really don't have any choice in any of this because it's being dictated from a state level. And if we don't do it, we don't get any monies. Is that correct?
That is sort of correct. What we're looking at is the OSBA policy template. We use OSBA for most of our policies for templates. Any district is free to write their own policy with their own legal approvals from their own legal source. So a school board member could attempt to write their own version of this policy, right? And if it passes muster, you just have to pass a policy. What we're looking at is the OSBA recommended template.
But I think it has to use the term bias incident.
Oh, yes, that is a fact.
Okay.
If that's your specific question, yes.
Yeah, so we have to use the term bias incident.
Mhm.
And the problem with this, to me, is bias incident is rather vague. And it could be interpreted a number of ways. I know it just kind of basically means if you make somebody else feel uncomfortable, with regard to their sexual orientation, gender, race, disability, national origin, religion, color, perceived race, etc., then you have created a bias incident. And then we get into, for every action, we have to have a reaction, right? So in responding to the use, as the policy states, in responding to the use of symbols of hate, the district will use non-disciplinary remedial. Well, that's about using symbols of hate. I don't know
Correct.
how, I'm not
Symbols.
clear on how we respond when a bias incident occurs. What are we required to do? What is the required action by the district?
Yeah, now for this, we would lean on admin staff, so building staff, to determine the appropriate action based on the incident. Some form of action needs to happen, which begins with obviously removing of the symbol, right? So the symbol has to be removed from the, what do you call it, the environment of what the other students are seeing.
But it's not just a symbol. It can be speech. It can be, and this is where I'm concerned, because we have had incidents in the past where we have exercised punitive measures towards students who were off campus after hours on social media. So
Well,
I'm just wondering
timing.
how we're going to define the parameters of our reach.
Yeah, timing of the event and location of the event is still, I don't think, part of this policy. This is on district and affecting, I don't know if you attended the workshop on speech. There was a workshop put on by OSBA a week or two ago on bias incidences and through speech and freedom of speech, and the
Yeah, I'm
rule.
really familiar with this. I was dealing with something else at the time.
Yeah.
So go ahead and.
The rule is when it directly affects another student's educational environment. Okay. And that is left open for interpretation by lawyers and judges.
Crystal has her hand up.
Crystal, sorry, I've got my Word document is in front of my screen right now.
That's okay. I'll let Heidi finish her question and you guys, then you can call on me.
No, my question is just about interpretation And what are the districts, what are we considering the district's, the student learning environment? Is it just on campus, or are we gonna now say it's anything, you know, thanks. that's
It's
all.
anything involving CDL as well, right?
So to echo Heidi's, since she's done, echo Heidi's concern. I like this policy, except I feel like we need to have clear guidance in there of when our jurisdiction and where our jurisdiction takes effect as a district, so that we don't go over freedom of speech. As historically, there's been some gray area that puts our administration in the judgment call area. So is there like a third policy that also reflects that the OSBA released, that we could clearly document it? Because any use of, say, a mobile hotspot from the school, if they type anything in there, or a sibling does, or anything like that, are they going to be penalized for that?
I think you should look at the AR where it says that you kind of on all these policies, you have to look at the policy and the AR kind of simultaneously, because the AR defines how you're going to handle situations, right? And I've got the AR up, which is why my screen is completely full
And I
of
The AR
Word
app, I
document.
can't
Mhm.
screen up.
And it says, that the administrator shall acknowledge the receipt of the complaint and investigate any complaint of a bias incident. It doesn't say that you have to clearly, state boundaries on things, because it's hard to do that. The legal interpretation we get from OSBA is, did you inflict harm on another student's educational environment? And that is the rule.
Right, and I have the AR up in front of me. I was able to
Mhm.
pull up my second screen. I just want to make sure that it's not, I know we're going to go through here, the complaint procedure, but I do not see like as Heidi was saying, a definitive piece where it excludes internet, or, I mean, I see some of it on there where it talks about internet and the areas. So I don't know if you want to go line by line and we discuss it, or what. But I mean, if we're taking this, I think it needs some work before we take it to the business meeting.
Specify a step where you're looking at in the AR right now.
Like step 2 says the administrator or designee shall acknowledge receipt of the complaint, reduce the complaint to writing, and investigate any complaint of a bias incident. Responding staff will recognize the experience of all persons impacted, acknowledge the impact, commit to taking immediate action, and prevent further harm against those persons impacted from taking place. Redirecting procedures, if any, will include. So I have the AR in front of me. I'm looking at where our jurisdiction is.
We're not defining that here because it's your student's educational environment.
Right, which is very, very broad. So,
Purposely done so by the legislator and ODE.
yes. And so you had told us that we're supposed to go through these and it's our guidance. So I'm not necessarily, I like this and I like how it's written, but I want to see where we have clear guidance in where our jurisdiction begins and ends for our district.
Yeah. And I continue to fall back on the same thing that Kelly Noor told us, last, whenever it was, March or April, that the guidance and restriction from the legal team is the boundaries of a student's educational environment.
So when the ASB goes online to say Instagram, which I know they have, and somebody random, not one of our students, says something that would be a bias complaint, how are we going to deal with that?
To our student, I mean, a complaint of a student or a complaint of a public figure or a public, somebody's staff, you mean?
Either, because it's anybody can follow that Instagram feed.
Yeah, if it's,
So if it's a student and it was somebody random that we don't know, like a troll, how are we going to handle that? Because
if it's somebody not a student, it goes to the police. It goes to, well, I guess there's a better word than the word police, but it goes off to the law enforcement.
see where I'm going with this? Like, where's
No,
the
that's my trouble. I'm not. That's why I'm struggling.
Heidi? Can you chime in on that? Or Ricardo or Jason? Oh, I see Jason has his hand up. Maybe he can explain
Oh.
it better.
All right, let's just acknowledge that Jason has joined the meeting. So for attendance. All right, I'm back on the main screen now.
I think, if I may, I think that what, maybe what we're looking at here is like, when you define the educational environment, does that mean that if one student sees something on another student's private social media account and that makes them uncomfortable, that they can say, I can't go to school with that person because this is what they think, or they, this is, I mean, is that kind of where we're going with it? Like, maybe that's what,
Well, there's a level there. If I see a threat on a private personal Facebook account, I am expected to respond to that. Am I not?
well, threat's one thing, but I guess I meant just like somebody expressing an opinion that another person might feel is biased.
Or another person might feel as a
I'm just
threat.
trying to think
right?
of possibilities here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I
that's
guess
where
I'm
that's
worried
where the
about
investigative
response.
body, which is the building administrator, needs to do that investigation.
So where's our policy on that gives them guidance? Because it looks like we need to update an additional policy besides these that give us clear guidance on social media.
Oh, we have lots of policies on that.
We have lots of policies on social media, but I can't quote them to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm like thinking that these need to be linked, because I'm feeling like I feel like if I'm thinking in the future when all of us are gone, I don't want to not be extensively clear on the, freedom of speech thing, which some teachers even have had freedom of speech issues. So then I just want to make sure that we're clearly, within our requirements, especially in the political realm.
I think step 2 says that the administrator will formally boil it down to a written complaint, and then the complaint process, which we do have documented in policy, initiates.
I just want to point out in another policy that we're going to be reviewing real quick, which is the updated sexual harassment policy, that what they've done in this policy, similar to the line of thinking that Crystal and Heidi are expressing, is that common complaint procedures share, and here's a list of some of them that we have actually adopted as well. They're trying to link them all so that they're congruent, that they make sense, that the same types of procedures and limitations are consistent throughout the policies. So anything having to do with a complaint is part of that process. Staff complaint, student complaint, cyberbullying complaint, sexual harassment complaint, and then this bias, that this is another way in which the complaint policy can be used to address concerns.
And that's the word I couldn't think of, because I was thinking this is just kind of a marginal extension of the cyberbullying
Yes,
policy
yeah.
that we've had for a long time.
No, I can't raise my hand in the
Oh.
chat thing there, but can I add
Yep.
something to that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
When I started getting these ready for adoption and looking at the OSBA summary, the one thing that I noticed too was it did mention that this was kind of more of a timely thing. I mean, we have till January, but they were going to be coming out with more policies, Crystal, like to address your question, to where they're all going to link to the same, kind of like what Ginger just said. You know, they've started with the sexual harassment ones. And then as it models with another policy, those will be updated as well.
And I can certainly give that feedback to Spencer Lewis, who is the OSBA policy template king. Because it's March when we're going to adopt, well, theoretically it's March when the permanent rules come out that we're going to really have the model policies that are not just thrown up for the temp rules that we're dealing with now.
Yeah, and these are not meant to be to encompass the how things will be done. They ask us to by adopting these temporary rule policies, what they're asking us to do is to do what we're doing right now, which is to talk about these things with the community and to develop rules so that when something happens along this line that feels like someone is biased, that we have a way to talk about it and work through it instead of going to a discipline matrix. Sometimes you have to go to a discipline matrix if someone's done something so egregious that it prevents people from being able to have a discussion about it. And someone used an inappropriate word to describe someone. Someone used a symbol. The middle school has, one of the places in my discovery is the question that I've been asking everyone is, in your history with the district, how many times have you dealt with these symbols? And the one that kept coming up was the swastika and the white pride. And that because those things have come up before, it really is kind of important that we work with this a little bit. And that's what they want us to do, is to work with it and to have conversations and to talk about where it applies and where it doesn't. And the questions that you're raising are excellent questions. This is exactly what we should be doing with this topic right now, is having this kind of a conversation to figure out what else we need to learn about it before we move forward.
And my issue with some of the questions that I'm not connecting with is I just feel strongly against having a rubric for discipline, because there's so much context that needs to come in. And that's where you need quality administrators in your buildings who can look at the context, who can bring parties together, who can work it out. If we have a discipline rubric, you're basically just if A, then B, then C, outcome bad, right? And the rubrics tend to always have bad outcomes. And you really need to rely on good administrators to bring parties together to work it out. You can't constrain them.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Ricardo. I see lots of hands up. Sorry, my hand thingy just popped up.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ricardo, can I put you on hold? Because I think Jason had his hand up first. Sorry.
All right.
Jason.
So I was going to comment maybe initially based on Crystal's and Heidi's. And I'm on a stationary bike. That's why I'm breathing so hard. But if we're going to table this and allow for discussion, then we can do that. But to me, our incident last year is a clear example that we don't know where our boundaries are. And we don't know how to handle these issues. So to me, to brush it under the carpet now and say, oh, well, we'll rely on people who know what they're doing. But we realize that people don't know what they're doing. So anyway.
Ricardo?
Right. Same thing, about Crystal and Heidi's concern about boundaries. I strongly believe that we all have freedom of speech, but we must be responsible for our actions, you know, our comments. So if we going to, if I'm going to be like in Seattle and I think that I can say something just because I'm in Seattle or somewhere else, I don't think it's, I think I'll be in trouble, you know, if I say something inappropriate. So I know it is difficult to think that, well, I can say something and I'm not going to be out of trouble just because I'm in other places, or I'm using something that I consider private. But if it's so private, why then someone else can see it? So, you know, I know it's hard and it's going to be difficult, but we must do something where people will be responsible for their comments or actions.
Heidi, your hand's up.
So Ricardo, I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with the sentiment, but then my little libertarian free speech side comes out, and I feel like if I'm in Seattle or wherever I am, I should be able to say what I should be able to say kind of what I think, right? And if that makes somebody else uncomfortable, as long as I'm not threatening them, or, you know, I mean, I guess I'm just really concerned about where the slope for free speech comes. I'm concerned about kind of like, maybe I read too much Orwell when I was young or something, but I'm kind of worried about newspeak. And, you know, if you say something that I don't like, well, there's consequences for it. And I understand people being able to feel safe and having a right to do that in their school. And I get where this is coming. I just worry about the fringes and the interpretation. Also, while I have the mic, I want to say one more thing. In the AR, under step 2, it uses the word that redirection procedures will be accountability and transformation for people who cause harm. I want to know what transformation means when we talk about transforming people. That's also a little scary to me, and I'll let it go. Thanks.
Transformation of the conditions is the total phrase there, right? But before I go into that, I think Crystal has her hand up.
No, just to correct you, it does not say conditions. It says accountability and transformation for people who cause harm and transformation of the conditions. But it does say transformation for people. So who's going to say who's been transformed? And I don't know.
Oh, I was reading bullet 4. You're reading bullet 3.
Okay, so 2 things. First, we haven't settled on a district statement on equity. So I just want to pull that out because it's right under there on all students belong. And then second of all, unless they're talking about Ginger's letter that went out. And then second of all, from totally not a racial perspective, but a religious perspective, that's where I again struggle with social media and everything else. Like if somebody says they're of a specific religious thing and somebody disagrees, we wouldn't be penalizing them for that. So that's why I'm looking for, and maybe this will make more sense, like Ginger and Diane chimed in, when we get those other components that are all together. Because as this is right now, I feel like I'm rubber stamping with no clear guidance and jurisdiction on where our administrators can go. Like, I'm not sure I feel comfortable with, you know, approving something like this without some clear jurisdiction within the internet realm, especially in CDL learning. there's a very definitive crossover there. And I want to make sure we have clear guidelines, as Jason and Heidi also brought up.
Then I would bring it back to the board members to come up with some potential language you want us to consider.
I can do that.
And let's see where we're at here. So we have a business meeting in December. So business meeting in December is the cutoff deadline
Okay.
for this.
Well, I'm
And
thinking,
are we having a work session on Thanksgiving?
well, I think we should pick a day in November. to
That's
have-
what I'm saying. Do we have a work session during the week of Thanksgiving?
I'm in Maine, but I can maybe call into it. I might be on an airplane Monday night though.
It says we have one scheduled for the 23rd, which is the Monday before Thanksgiving.
So that would be the time we must pass. So we cannot be debating that on the 23rd. We have to pass first reading on the 23rd.
Why?
So we need to,
Of
because the business
November?
meeting is the 14th, right? The business meeting is where we're going to have second reading and adoption on the 14th. That's the last meeting we have before January 1st, which is the deadline to have a policy.
So can we move that date to the 30th after Thanksgiving or no?
Move which date? What, why, when, what?
I'm
Say
just
what?
trying to figure out. I'm going to let Jason chime in first though, because his hand's been raised.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at the calendar.
I'm just helping you out.
Jason?
So the definition of bias was previously noted, wasn't it? It
Yes.
described what is meant by bias.
It's in the model policy.
Okay. Because we've been talking about this obviously since retreat and even before that. And, you know, biases can be anything. We all recognize that we have them. And, you know, even the smallest thing that might upset someone who's got a delicate constitution is, you know, considered a bigot or racist or, you know, it seems odd that the language is being changed to bias now versus discriminatory or some other word, which we all knew what meant before, but now we're all confused because everything could be considered as such.
Yeah, I like
Again-
that point, Jason.
I will come back to my point, which is not to have a definitive rubric of justice for these kind of things. If you don't like the way, you know, things have been handled in the recent past, then let's ask Ginger to get our building leaders into a restorative justice training session, you know, that kind of guides them through this.
Yeah, I was going to say to the earlier comment about administrators not being able to handle this kind of a topic very well. It's because they don't have the guidelines and the policies that allow them to do that. They have to implement the rules that are in front of them. So this is a way in which we can make sure that kids can retain their freedom of speech and at the same time process something that may meet the definition of bias, which in this particular document you can see is a person's hostile expression of animus towards another person. So it doesn't relate to what a person says necessarily unless they're being hostile. And if it's related to race, color, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, national origin.
Yeah, there's that. And the other reason I bring up again, back to the building administrators, bringing the parties together and working it out, because a rubric that is for the high school where a lot of this stuff happens doesn't work for K through 3, which is also where some of this stuff happens.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where the building administrator needs to be trained properly and needs to be engaged in running the process.
Mhm. And I think this policy allows more freedom of speech, actually, than our existing policies do. They're just still they're pretty black and white. And if you say something wrong, boom, there's a consequence. First time, second time, third time. So something to consider. Jason's hand's up again, and so is Heidi. Is your hand up again?
Jason, go ahead. Or was Jason up first? Okay, I didn't catch. I just see 2 hands up now. So Jason, go. You're on mute, Jason.
I just forgot to lower my hand. My apologies.
Oh, okay. Heidi, you're up.
Yeah, so looking at the, I don't know, this paperwork I got from Ginger, it's a copy of some, maybe it's the Oregon Department of Education. Anyway, it talks about what the policies need to do. And it says, it says that every effort should be made to educate those committing the offense and to find non-punitive remedial measures. And I think that's where we need to go, that's what we need to work on. I liked what Ginger said is the education part, the non-punitive remedial measures, instead of, going back to the banning students from this and that, if they do something we don't like, embracing a little more flexible approach. Like you said, I'm willing to support this as a work in progress, if this is what we need to do to get us on the road. But I do have concerns about, I just would like us to talk a little more about, I don't understand what transformation means. Thanks.
I put transformation into what we started talking about last year and then got derailed, which is the restorative justice formation, where we're not doing punitive justice and modeling and getting our staff, which includes administrators and teachers, into the world of restorative justice, which is heavily promoted right now. It's the right way to go. A lot of schools are doing it. Not putting kids on the street over small things, as in yelling in the classroom or being momentarily disruptive, but working with them, as opposed to just saying you're now on the street for 2 weeks, can be devastating to a kid. And that's the kind of work that we need to have our administration trained in, and work well in. And some of them do some of the time. I don't believe any of our current administrators don't ever. I think they all give it a whirl. So, that's the constraining things I'm trying to stay away from, but to get into more problems of practice, and especially around restorative justice. And that's transformational, which you're trying to just explain and talk to the student. Begin with what's up with your day, not why are you doing this, but what's making you angry today. That's kind of the start of the restorative justice system. Crystal.
I would just say, yeah, I'm with Heidi. This is definitely a work in progress. It's not at a point where I feel that I can approve it. First off, we're still missing the district statement on equity. I still have not seen that final. And then second of all, I would like the language to clearly define, I love restorative, and I can honestly tell you in the middle school realm that I've witnessed it myself. And it's a much better piece, but I still believe that we need that clear jurisdiction of regarding the internet and all of those pieces, especially in the CDL format that we're on. So that's just me giving my opinion.
Back to where we were a moment ago. We need to be finalizing and approving first reading on the 23rd. I did hear a suggestion of pushing it out to the 30th, may be possible. But at the same time, I think it should be, if we're going to talk like this level of detail, if somebody's going to make a proposed language, it's probably a 2-meeting discussion. First edits are not going to be final edits.
Right. And so how much time do you want to spend
And
on?
also that whatever the edits are needs to go through legal to make sure that we're not breaking any legal boundaries. So that would be edits almost to us by like right after. Why is my calendar not working? Hold on, my calendar's stuck. So we're going to have a meeting on the 10th, the business meeting. So we probably have to have it for legal review shortly thereafter the 10th, which means we have to discuss it first. Or sorry, 17th. So if we meet on the 17th or the 16th, then agree to final edits, proposed edits, go through legal review for the 23rd work session, then first reading and adoption, followed by the December business meeting for second adoption, we will meet the schedule. Unless legal blows it out of the water. But we can always fall back on these OSBA proposed templates if we need to.
Yeah, I think
And
that's an
also,
option.
I also point out that, final rule is expected from ODE in sometime in March. These are temp rules. So final policies will be different than what we have in front of us now, because I'm sure the final rules are not just going to be cut and paste to the temp rules. So there will be policy update after March, probably with a set timeline of new policies based on whatever they finalize these rules for all students belong.
Well, that just tells me they haven't figured it out yet either.
No doubt. ODE we're talking about now, right?
Correct.
So that's why they put out temp rules, right? And most government agencies do that. They'll put out temp rules for 3 to 6 months, shake the trees, and then they'll put out final rules.
I guess I can make a motion then that we work on this and bring it back to the work session on November, what is that, 23rd?
And then we would have to have another work session on the 30th.
Okay,
If we edit it on the 23rd, it goes to legal, then we would have to have another work session on the 30th for first reading.
Is there a reason we can't talk about this in our business session?
that's what I was gonna ask, Heidi. I agree. Can we have a 30-minute work session on the 9th?
Yeah, typically we roll these in work sessions, right? Business meeting is business. If we're editing and just carving, it's just not usual, right?
I suggest that we have a 30-minute work session prior to the start of the meeting, if you want to do it on that day.
We could do a 5:30 to 6 work session and then do our formal business meeting.
Yep.
Well, I mean, honestly, we've done a lot of first readings and adoptions in business meetings. I mean,
When we
Yeah.
do both, but we kind of agreed when Glenn took over that we would not do that anymore.
Yeah. That was
That
kind
we
of
would
the
use
discussion
work
we had.
sessions to discuss it because people were giving negative feedback on when we did first, second, and adoption all in one shot. So Glenn changed the rules on that.
personally, I'd rather add this to the end of the business meeting than starting at 5:30. That's just me.
So in
Comments?
the meeting half an hour early and move to a work session.
So yeah, go from 6 to 7:30 on the business meeting, get through all of our staff reports and everything else, and then have a work session. And we can Zoom it from 7:30 to 8:30 with an expectation that we'll be done by 8.
I love
Is that-
that.
Is that fair? Diane, do you have that?
I do.
Okay. Thumbs up for consensus on that.
I'm not a
Okay.
voting. I agree.
Crystal, I don't see you, so I'm assuming your thumb is up.
I concur that we're
Okay.
moving the work. Let me just make sure I have this correct in my calendar. November 9th, we are having our board business meeting starting at 6 p.m. to 7:30. And then at 7:30, I assume we'll take a 5-minute break. 7:35 to 8 o'clock will be the written change it
work session to discuss the edits.
for this.
So that leaves for whoever's going to suggest it from the board, whatever edits are coming from the board need to be in to us by the 6th.
Okay.
Yeah, and Crystal, if you're going to work on that, I'd be happy to help you and take your work and work with it.
Yeah. So to be submitted by Friday the 6th,
Well,
not
yeah,
preferably late.
yeah. So.
Okay.
Okay, and the board action item is being taken on by Crystal, assisted by Ginger.
Yes. And then I'm going to say, because we're not in a board meeting and we don't have any action items on the agenda, that we shouldn't execute any action items, so you guys don't need to vote on anything today.
But we have another set of policies coming up, right? For
Yeah,
first
but
reading.
these are just first readings and it's a work session.
Yeah.
So we have no
Mhm.
action items on the agenda. We haven't modified the agenda at the start of the meeting to say we're going to have
Yeah,
action.
no,
items on-
we're adding on to our agenda
Yeah,
for the 9th.
yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we can talk about it tonight, but no one has to take any action or vote on anything tonight.
Okay, let's seal that off and go to 2E so we can get back to our goals, which is first reading on the OSBA policies, and there's a bundle of them, but they're primarily around sexual harassment and communicable diseases. Ginger, can you give us a high-level summary of the first reading on these?
Well, as far as communicable diseases, the current policies don't have the word COVID-19 in any of the policies. So that's the big change. And then the other change is making sure that language is included in the administrative regulations that describe the OHA and the CDC guidelines for how people that have COVID or coming back from COVID can return to the workforce. So that's kind of the upshot of the communicable disease policies. As far as the sexual harassment policies are concerned, the feds, there's been some lawsuits in both Oregon and the US Supreme Court and the district courts having to do with sexual harassment and the being in, we've seen it in some of the places where people are accused of doing something that there's little solid evidence that it happened. So the rights of the person that's being accused were not in the policies before. So these policies have been rewritten so that they represent both the rights of the person who feels that they've been sexually harassed and the person who is accused. And it requires certain notifications and guidelines and identification of a person, the Title IX investigator, which we already have Patrick assigned in that role for Title IX. And it just kind of follows that guideline, making sure that we communicate to both parties their rights and what they will be given and what they're entitled to, and to make sure that we support both parties through the process of the investigation and the completion of the investigation. So that's my quick summary.
I assume admin is in favor of the changes, correct?
Well, yes, and we don't really have a choice. It's the new federal policy and this new state
Yeah.
law. So we
Yeah.
have to do it that way.
Just out of curiosity, because I was reading these and I was kind of just wondering, do we actually have to list the viruses? Like, when we just say what the CDC current list for communicable diseases is?
No, this one's special. This is a unique.
Wow.
And they had to include it, and I think it has to do with the fact that no one's covering communicable diseases anymore.
Yeah,
It's
on
not
liability.
Yeah, so it's they want
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay, I see Jason's hand up. Oh, and Crystal's hands up now. So let's go with Jason, then Crystal.
Bill, I'm not sure what you're leading to on that. I mean, if you were to boil it down to every possible disease that can create harm or potential hazard to people within a policy, I mean, you know, let's say a year from now, COVID's gone. So we're gonna have to go, well, when COVID-20, we have to change our policies to COVID-20. To me, it's
Well, that's what-
it can cause harm based on their perceived, you know, potential threat to, you know, how communicable they are. It seems
That's
odd
what-
that you name it directly.
That's me too. That's why I was saying, why are we naming it, right? Why don't we just have that?
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. It's just that
Mhm.
they changed the state law. And so therefore the ORS that we have on the books in our policy doesn't reflect the new language that's in the existing ORS. So that's why they say. delete
Yeah, it's just
one,
it's frustrating
new one.
as a people who make policy for their district to be overridden by people who I don't think are doing their job in the first place, but it's just me.
Crystal?
Hi, sorry about that. So I was looking at that OAR or ORA, whatever, online that we're reviewing, and this is actually a temporary document. So why are we putting in a permanent AR on a temporary law? That would be my concern.
Take it one level deeper. What?
So this document is calling out COVID, but the law that's dictating this to call out COVID is a temporary OAR.
I think they're working on permanent rules for that.
Yeah, the one that when I listened to the city, the ones that they were looking at, which were similar to this, expired in 12/31 of 2020. So I would be making a motion that we table this till January till we see what the permanent law is required in the business meeting.
What was the requirement from the state, Ginger? Sorry on this.
It's just that they said for students, we needed to adopt it. That's not an option. And everything else is strongly recommended. So,
Yeah, I'm only looking at this one,
Yeah.
you know, and it does list everything out, you know, that we've known for the last 100 years for major things. And COVID to me will always remain a major one.
So the one thing is, Bill, as I finish is that here it lists out the vaccines and there is not a vaccine. So I'm very uncomfortable listing COVID-19 in there, A, for the vaccine piece, and then B, also because there is no clear guidance. CDC is still changing on a weekly basis. Same with OHA, same with WHO and everything else in the healthcare world. So putting this into a firm policy seems questionable in my opinion.
My alternative approach to that is needing to have it for students just as a liability coverage kind of thing, since we don't have liability, that says we are acknowledging this and that the liability piece is being handled.
and I'm wondering if I have it down to number 3, because I remember there was something about staff in here too, which I have up on the screen now. This is what gives us the authority to put someone on administrative leave.
Actually, we're not seeing your screen.
Yeah, we don't
Ginger.
see your screen.
Oh, it says I'm screen sharing.
It doesn't look like it's open.
Oh,
I see parts of it, but not all of it.
can you see it?
Now it is.
Okay.
Okay, now we see your number 3 highlighted.
Yeah.
What is your, now start again, say your point on number 3.
It gives us the authority to to tell staff that it's okay for them not to come to work. We don't want them to come to work. There's a chance for an exposure or substantial risk. So we need to exclude them from working.
Yeah.
We don't have the authority to do that right now in our policy for COVID.
I mean, I do see the point, you know, that rules are changing all the time and everybody's still learning from a complete top to bottom on COVID.
Mhm.
But I kind of read this all as a CYA on liability.
Yeah, I don't see what harm it does. I don't see it as being, having negative repercussions, and it's like, the good thing about policies is we can always change them. We can always go back and adopt, update them.
Yeah, and I hate to boil it down to this kind of sad statement, but I'm going to make a sad statement that the thing we need to do for fiduciary responsibility to our district is always say, hey, we did what the higher level of government asked us to do. So what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That's the liability coverage we get now.
Right.
Well, my point is, if it's a requirement, why are they asking us of our opinion?
No,
Why is it-
they're asking us to pass it. They're not asking, they're actually semi-telling us just pass this.
I know,
Right?
and that's my
I don't
point
think
is,
they're asking our opinion.
why are they asking us to even consider it or make comment on it if there's really no choice in it?
We get a number of policies like this, like sexual harassment policy. You have to have it. That's not an opinion.
Well, yeah,
Right.
but it's a matter of, okay, here's the requirement, implement it and be done with it. Don't discuss it. It's not your choice to discuss it.
Diane,
Yes.
would you explain why they give us brackets and stuff like that, and what that role is for us in our policy review?
Yeah, for sure. So the brackets are choices, and typically we'll just name, kind of looking at you scrolling here, Ginger.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any brackets in this.
The shaded language is added language to current policy. The strikeout, which I don't see any right now, is exactly that, to strike that out. Also, what OSBA has told us in the past is ARs are the administrative rules. It's your overarching policy that is going to be your guiding light. ARs don't have to be approved by the board, but we would like them to be accepted by the board. Bill, you probably know that as well.
Yep.
I don't see a lot of strikeout in there. But Ginger, if you kind of go back up to the top, they're showing the review track changes. So like when you see that red line on 2 and 3, that's showing you where there's added language. So we really have this policy in place already, but there's
Not specifically for COVID.
not specifically for COVID, you're correct. But so the it is added language.
And I'm also wondering if part of that purpose of us reviewing it is to educate us on the changes to our current policy, so we can see what we're liable for now compared to in the past, or what we have to be watching for now compared to the past policy.
So Diane, did you say that gray was added
Yes.
by legal or by the OSBA?
Well, you have to remember that any of these policies that come out for our review, some of them are optional, some of them are recommended, and some are required. All of the policies are reviewed by their legal team before they come to us.
Right.
OSBA's legal team, right?
So OSBA was one that put COVID-19 in there. Now, are we at a position that we can put this as a temporary policy through when the COVID-19 requirements expire? My concern is the way that this is worded, it appears as though staff could refuse to come back to work if there is not a vaccine, which is the rumor that's going around.
Oh, no, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think this doesn't allow that.
Allow that.
No, this doesn't.
I think that's just happening from a contractual point of view.
Yeah.
This policy doesn't endorse or prevent that.
Well, this is a staff document and a student document. So that is why I'm being very fickle on this. I want to make sure that children that are not vaccinated for COVID-19 are not excluded from our opportunities. Because essentially that's what I'm reading here.
Well, you don't have to be vaccinated on any of these things in Oregon law, right?
You're supposed to be, or
Well, but you can sign a waiver,
Right.
right?
What's the new?
I mean,
vaccine?
I'm reading through the list here. Everything here can be waived
Mhm.
unless the governor, or unless the government led by the governor doesn't allow the waiver and they vote that in, that would not be in our choice. It'd be, you need to call your legislative representative if that happens.
So those are my two main concerns with this essentially temporary policy and temporary law that's in effect till 12/31. Can we put a temporary date on this? Because from how I'm reading it, and I've went through these a couple different times, there's 2 points that I want to make sure of. A, we're not excluding students from being able to return to school if they don't have a COVID-19 vaccine. And B, that staff cannot refuse to come back to school because there isn't a COVID-19, which has been brought up to me by multiple people.
I would suggest taking the other approach, that we put it on our January agenda, that we discuss that
Mhm.
In January, and not try to run this through legal and try to figure out the terminology and things, but just that we review this policy in January and make that an agenda item. Because we can reject the policy at any time, as long as we remember that we wanted to talk about it.
Right, and as long as we remember that we're still held liable to that standard. If
So we can look at the situation in January, and then in April, and then in June, and review this policy as the world turns.
And we have other policies on the same topic that
There's a whole slew of them.
we can't exclude students. I mean, there's a very high bar for doing that, and it would have nothing to do with immunizations.
And that's the legal side of having to go through it, making even a word change here like that.
Yeah, and I know that there are lots of people that are really concerned about that vaccinations, and I know that this is when I go to the, what are the facts of the case? There's a group of people who are so concerned about it, they've pulled out of the public schools altogether and started their own schools, leaving in a large group several school districts because they don't want to take that risk. So I know people really are concerned about that. But I know that we don't have the authority to exclude students unless
Under state law, unless state law changes.
state law changes. And like this rule doesn't exclude students, and this policy doesn't exclude students. And this one, as you can see from the very, very top, is only talking about staff.
This particular one, yeah. Jason, is your hand up or just not down?
Sorry, it didn't have anything. Thanks.
Okay.
No, but I hear you, Crystal. I know we're hearing things out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news. I work in healthcare. I really love healthcare, but I just want to be, responsible.
So I'd say we take, for me, I'm going to suggest we take an action item to review our pandemic policies, or any policy involving the current pandemic, in January, and see where we stand.
I concur.
Remember, these are for first reading.
Yeah.
There's no action. You don't need to take action on these.
Require an action.
Mhm.
Can we just have it put on our workbook then for January for these to be reviewed at the business meeting? Thanks, Diane.
At the business meeting, or no, we want to read them first at the work session.
Pardon me.
Well, we'll review them at the work session, right?
Yeah.
We'll pull them up and have them as a work session agenda. Say January, April, and June.
Yeah, we have time.
Right, and then we can vote on to pull them, to yank them if at the following business meeting if it's not good. But in the meantime, we can meet the requirements of the legal requirements and put them through with a commitment to review.
Mhm.
That's my suggestion.
Heidi has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Heidi, go.
So for me, I have no problem supporting these. I think, as you said, Bill, it helps with liability. It kind of protects us. It puts us in line with any, state requirements. All these other diseases listed are already listed. There's already rules around those. We've been following them for decades. And we're just adding COVID-19. I understand that there are required vaccines for the other ones. And maybe that's the concern, is like, whether we're going to have COVID-19 listed as one that we would exclude people from school for if they don't follow. But then I think we've also given people ways to address that if they don't want to have their children vaccinated and still attend school, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so I would just say, if we want to get some business done here, I personally don't have a problem supporting the these policies.
Okay, so if I get a thumbs up for approving the first reading, we don't need a motion or anything. We just say we did a first reading, that everybody's okay with pressing on with this, with a commitment to review in January. Can I get consensus on that?
Yep.
Crystal, thumbs up, thumbs down?
I'll say that we did a first reading.
Okay. All right. And Diane, we'll work on when we get there, we'll make sure that's on the agenda for January.
Got it.
Okay. All right. So at the beginning of the meeting, I said we're flipping the order on this. So we're back to
sorry,
2A.
Bill.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yep.
We need to do something with the sexual harassment. Do we also do a first reading for that? Did we?
Oh,
do that
good
just
point.
now?
Thanks. Let's just say, was there any questions on the sexual harassment policy changes that were done here? I'm good with them. They were kind of straightforward, just wordsmithing and cleaning up some language, making the language better, in my opinion. Open to anybody who's got a comment. Otherwise, we'll give, do we have thumbs up for the sexual harassment policies on first reading? Yep, I see 2, I see 3. Jason, Ricardo. Okay, sorry, can't see Crystal. I'm assuming you're gonna tell us. Okay. All right, thanks for that reminder, Heidi. All right, first readings are done. So we are now over to the board soup operating agreement, which is 2A. And what we talked a little bit about, not too much at the retreat. We kind of just threw them up and said, look at these. I know I'm looking at it on my screen. Ginger, do we want to share this thing? So I have the board soup operating agreement for 1920. We need to make one for 2021. Assuming there's changes, right?
Right. And this is the old one, I think.
Yeah, what we have is the 1920 in the
Right.
packet.
Can you see this?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's pretty high level stuff in here. My speed reading immediately takes me to the expectations of the superintendent and the expectations of the board from the superintendent. So just just open the floor for discussion, or do you want me to read through these one at a time? How about we just open the floor for general discussion?
I have my hand up, but I don't know
Oh,
if Heidi
sorry.
has her hand
No,
up.
I was looking at my screen. Okay, Heidi.
I do want to put my hand up, but I'll let you go first, Crystal, because I think my hand is still up from the previous one. So go ahead.
I liked the board agreement example 2. Is that what we're talking about?
Example 2. Sorry, no. Let me go back to my agenda.
I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if that's what you were looking for.
And I like number 1.
Hold on. Why is this not? Hold on, I'm having some technical difficulties. Give me a second. Okay, here we are. I'm back. So I see in my agenda, I see the operating agreement followed by the relationship.pdf and superintendent's expectations of the board, which is actually part of the first one. So when you say 1, 2, 3, can you help me understand what you mean by what is 1, what is 2, what is 3?
It's on the next page.
I thought you were looking for example. Sorry, maybe I misunderstood.
Did you, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Operating. school-
Okay. Now
So here's
I'm
the example.
I'm opening up these tabs.
Yeah,
Um,
here's one.
okay, I was looking at the actual operating agreements that we have in place now.
Yeah, I like that. And then now we'll look at 2. Can you see 2 now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And which one is the collaborative that they had talked about? Both of them, or what is that? Collaborative?
Collaborative governance is a total different thing. That's not board soup. Collaborative governance is where you bring in all the staff and
They had mentioned it during this section.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
it was actually a big series of workshops that they did 2 years ago at conference.
Here it is. This is,
And
I don't know if this is going to work.
yeah,
Let me-
collaborative governance is bringing in teacher voice, bringing in student voice, bringing in admin voice, doing things in that fashion.
I liked number 2 only because it clearly calls out curriculum, evaluation of curriculum, district performance. But if we can add those words to one of the other ones, or maybe I missed it on the other one, that I would be willing to go with Heidi on that. Although I will say Ricardo's been very quiet lately.
He is that way.
It's because I'm agreeing with you guys.
He's nodding his head.
Hold on, So we want to switch over to one of these OSBA examples from the work that we did with Steve Kelly before these examples came out. That's what I'm still at the high level on this. The one we had from last year was work we did with Steve Kelly and Renee. I don't think we had these examples at that time. This is probably something fresh.
I'd like to read the document that Crystal's referring to. It's an agreement sample, and the top of it starts with the 4 principles of collaborative governance. Members of the board and the superintendent shall work together as a team, modeling lifelong learning and collaboration. Number 2, board members shall recognize and respect the superintendent's responsibility to manage the school district and to direct employees in district and school matters. Number 3, board members shall give careful consideration, listening to all perspectives, to all issues brought to the board by individuals and district leadership. And number 4, the board shall make decisions only at properly called meetings. Board members recognize that individual members have no authority to take individual action in policy or district and school administrative matters unless so authorized by board vote. And then there's 3 communication agreements. Board members shall follow the chain of command and communicate directly with the superintendent when a question arises or a concern or complaint is voiced by a staff member, student, parent, or community member. Number 2, board members shall communicate directly with the superintendent or board chair prior to meetings of the board to address questions and or concerns about agenda items. And number 3, board members and the superintendent shall communicate one-on-one when an individual concern arises with any member of the board superintendent team as appropriate. And then there's a spot for 5 board expectations of the superintendent and 5 expectations for the superintendent of the board, and then signatures of agreement. So that's example 3, which is in the packet from Renee that Diane put together. So if you have your board retreat packet, you actually have it.
Yep.
And the first page on that is the board and superintendent operating agreement 2019-20 is page 1 of that packet that has example 3
Yeah,
included.
That's the one I was looking at. Right. Okay, so what is the suggestion? I got lost somewhere in all this.
Well, Crystal had mentioned 3, so I wanted you to see 1, 2, and she had mentioned the collaborative governance language. So I wanted to make sure that that was brought up so you could consider it.
Yeah, that's the part of collaborative governance between the board and the SUP.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
Collaborative governance is a long all-day workshop.
But it also kind of fits in with one of the emerging goals that you were talking about during the board retreat, which was more in community engagement and more activities with the board being involved with community. So maybe you want to move to a collaborative governance model.
And that's where I was kind of going with it, because we had set up, like, talked about community engagement was something we wanted. And Renee had talked about how this collaborative governance worked really well in that respect. So that's where I was looking for when we talked about this component. That's kind of where I was leading.
Heidi, you have your hand up? You with us? Oh, Heidi dropped her hand. Okay. Yeah, we could certainly work with OSBA and Renee's successor in forming kind of a partial lighthouse project, which is the collaborative governance piece, and put our board on that pathway to go there. If that's what everybody wants to do, it's valid. It's good data. It's got a lot of real world, examples of it being very positive. What was the Lighthouse project and then morphed into collaborative governance.
I mean, that's what I would like to see us go, Bill. And that's what my understanding was in the workshop we attended. But you can round robin and get everybody's opinion on if they also want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just, that's kind of was part of my takeaway from it, is that's where people wanted to head, was the community engagement and moving to a collaborative environment.
I would say it's to really do it well, it's a 2-year trek. Right. It doesn't mean that that's all we do for 2 years. I'm just saying it's a process where you move everything pieces at a time, and you get there in about 2 years and you realize what a great thing you accomplished over that time frame. But it's a bit of a commitment. But you go there, and it's kind of a process that really is enthusiastic and has a lot of positive points to it.
Well, I feel like it's 2020. So, I mean, hey, what's one more thing?
Yeah. Some of it is a commitment to not go to the conference workshops, to be engaged at the board level when we're bringing in, the facilitators as they're taking us through these steps, right? And there is a bit of a commitment. All right,
What-
Heidi, your hands back up.
Heidi?
I don't necessarily think we need to commit to a lighthouse project investment level type board development. But I like what Crystal is saying here. The third page of that, what we were given, which is the board superintendent operating sample, which talks about collaborative governance. I would just like to see if I think we could do a really easy hybrid, taking that the collaborative governance and the communication agreements, and then just kind of combining them with like our meeting combining them with what we already have.
Mhm.
As far as expectations, on the bottom, it says board expectations of the superintendent's expectations. Just kind of putting in there what we already have with
Yeah.
those two headers. Does that make sense?
And it does, and they kind of link along because, Steve Kelly helped us draft the document that we have now,
Mhm.
right? And he was the big promoter for collaborative government. So he was kind of intentionally, but subversively moving us towards that, right?
I like Heidi's approach. I think if we want to kind of experience what it's like, it should be a little more light,
So why don't we say, in this particular aspect of board soup operating agreements, let's use our 3 hours that we have still paid for with Renee before she leaves in December
Yeah.
to start us down this path.
Yeah.
Right, and take us there, at least get us moving on this path before she leaves. Is that fair?
My opinion about that is, if it's going to be like what our work session was, I really didn't get my money's worth out of that. I think because of the feel that
Yeah, we derailed it. I watched that presentation 2 weeks before because they did it exactly that for the Salem Kaiser board, but the Salem Kaiser board was at a low point. They are at a low point, and they were in desperate need of just listening. We immediately started taking it because we deal better. I hate to say that, but I'm going to say it, right? And we started taking it into really root details and causes, and that derailed their high level presentation. And I think that we should have warned them that we were going to jump into that depth. Maybe Renee should have known that, having dealt with us before, that we were going to go deep with this, right to the details, and skip the high level stuff.
Well, no, I think what I'm saying is, I felt like I sat and did a lot of listening, and we didn't really work. We didn't get to really have any discussions just as a
Mhm.
board. I just felt like it was a lot of listening, and I wanted
Yeah.
to actually do some work.
That's, I mean, we wanted to jump into the details, and they were giving us a high level presentation. Right.
Yeah,
But
I'm
at the
just-
same time, we have this funding, so we've got it. So we should get some facilitation on it while we have it available to us.
Yeah, I agree with
Crystal?
Heidi, though, that we need to make sure that they're aware when they come to the meeting that we want to run this as, me coming from a lean background. We want to get in and get some work done. We don't want a 2-hour presentation. And I appreciate their knowledge totally. But if we're going to work through this, we need to be able to sit down and work through this document and expect to have almost a finished copy.
Yeah, and knowing Renee for the number of years that I know her, if we give her the proper expectations of what we want, she will deliver.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's take our OSBA chits credits and get her to the level that we want her to be at. And Ginger, maybe Glenn, you and I can have a discussion with her on what we're just talking about here, really getting down to wanting to finalize this agreement in 3 hours and take us right to the work.
Yeah, and I think it'll be important for them to facilitate working through the board development goals.
Yeah.
Piece.
We need a facilitator for the meeting, that's for sure. Somebody who's not embedded in North Marion, somebody who's independent and keeps us on the path. Heidi, your hand is still up. I assume that's.
Yeah, I know, and I'll lower it, but I have another thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I would, if it was a choice, I think operating agreements are important, but I don't want to split hairs. I'd rather spend more time on our goals, making sure our goals are aligned and that we're working in a collaborative manner, because that's where you want to go working with other staff members to develop these goals. I'd rather spend time on goals than on agreements. That's
So let's go to 2B and pull up the 2019 to 22 adopted goals and just look at that table. This is another thing that Steve Kelly kind of walked us through at somebody's house. Oh, never mind. I got it. Here it comes. Okay, does everybody have up their school board goals? 19 to 22.
These or the other one?
I don't know. It's the first one on the agenda under 2B.
All right.
I don't see it on your screen.
I have it up on my word processor. So.
Nope. Not the right one. Hang on.
I just hit the first line item on the agenda.
The operating agreement, this one?
No. 2B. 2B on the agenda, 2019-22 board goals adopted,
Got it.
January 14th, 2019.
You went all Hamlet on me.
Uh,
To be or not to be.
and I'm not fond of Shakespeare, to be honest with you. I think he's highly overrated.
Come on, resume sharing. Why is it not sharing?
Do you want me to try?
Might have to. Hang on a second.
We're in a work session. Can I ask a question I forgot to ask?
Go ahead.
When was the date for since we're talking about board goals, I know it was one of our goals. When's the date for the go live on the new website? I forgot to.
I am meeting with them. We think it might be right around spring break.
Okay.
To make
Because
the
I know
full
that was in
transition.
our goals somewhere, but I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Clearly. I could have.
Really not until spring break?
Yes.
I think that's all the staff input that needs to happen on it.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, if we can get it done earlier, that would be great. But between COVID and CDL and the new high school and the bond projects and I'm stretching the staff really thin, and there has to be a design team. And there has to be people to look at every single web page that we have and decide what to keep and what needs to go. And they have to build that link, that magic calendar where you click on the day and all activities in the district pop up at the same time. It's going to take some time.
So Ginger, I asked to share the screen. Is that going to work?
I still don't see it, but I have mine pulled up on my second
Yep.
screen. But it could just be me.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. It's the one with the green header boxes.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
have mine up too.
yeah, okay.
How's that?
Up there you go. You got it. It's sharing now.
Okay.
Right. So we talk about in the first one, pretty straightforward on the first grouping, in my opinion. Sound fiscal plan is easy. School policies, lawful and equitable governance, superintendent providing educational leadership to create a high performing school system and help realize the mission and vision. statement that we've had in the district now for, I think it's 11 years. We've had the same mission and vision district and statement, and that's something maybe someday we'll relook at if we choose to. Vision and mission is the components. As you know, we break it down like that. So this is where I want to open the floor for discussion for group one. So group one is North Marion School District is a welcoming, respectful, and safe community. We put in these goals here. We talked about a customized district report card, which came up at two conferences or two conventions ago about people coming up with a district report card. Still a topic of discussion. I know some districts have went there and left it just because of the amount of work it took. Some people got too wrapped up in their forecast fives stuff, but it's still out here, and modeling a culture, personal integrity and responsibility, engaging our parents in the education process, right, and increasing community involvement. So these are all things that we discussed, not the fourth one, which is the district report card. But to me, the first three is what we were pretty much locked in on at the works at the retreat, right? Do we still like these as our welcoming, respectful, and safe community?
Can I give my 2 cents here?
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at the Word document, so I don't
Has
see
her hand up
hands.
afterwards.
Okay, Heidi first, then Crystal.
You know, in looking at this with like a new lens, I feel like these are way too wordy, that we should have about 4 bullet statements, and that's about it when we talk about our board of directors goals. Because board of directors, district school boards, school board goals. So, you know, do we want to have district goals or just our board goals? And if we want to have district goals, then they need to be developed in our collaborative environment, right?
Well, we have both.
I'm
These are our board goals, right?
Yeah, well, I'm reading all these items. The first, there's numbers 4 on the first part, then just bullets after the other parts. But anyway, this is part of our policies. A lot of this stuff is already in our policy. It's what we do. It's not like, they're not goals. And it's way too wordy.
I've gotten feedback from OSBA that our vision and mission statement that we were very proud of 11 years ago is way too long, right?
You know, Heidi, to chime in with you, I do not see any value in this document if there's no action being taken. And that's just me. I see high quality web-based resources. We're still struggling to like have a decent website. I think that's been on there since I was elected to the board. And then, you know, some of these things just seem irrelevant and wordy. I feel like you're right. As we move towards this hybrid collaborative environment that works, where the community is giving input, that's what our goals should be around. That, and of course, the achievement and success of each of our students in our district.
I've been in workshops at NSBA where, you know, your vision, your goals, you should have one goal, right? One goal between you and your superintendent, right? And that's it. Focus on that, whatever that one goal is. But you pick a primary goal, you know, set a line for 5 years on what you want your test scores for math and reading to be. That's the goal, right? Hit these points, explain why you hit or miss or exceed or them, right? But all of these little things, you know, really detract from what is your primary purpose, right? And the goal statement, the vision and mission statement, sorry, is your why. So going back to what Bill Delacruz said, it's not about action and how, right? Your vision and mission statement is your why. Why are you here? What is your purpose for being here? Just talk about your why, right? And the board needs a why. Why are we doing this? right? And then you get into the action and the hows and the do's, right? That's your metrics and all those other kind of things for measuring, but your vision and mission statement should be your why.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bill. And I think that, you know, we should just whittle it down to 1 or 2 sentences. Anyway.
So my question is, so besides this, I'm looking at our board goals 1920 that are linked, and we talk about equity, math, and communications. And we are like seriously failing in all those 3 areas. We have kids still without internet, our math scores still suck, and our website still sucks. So how
But at the same time, we didn't metric remember what they were talking about in the work session, or sorry, in the retreat, that the 4th column is the metric. How are you measuring yourself? And none of these things have a metric, right? That says what it is how you're going to know if you've achieved your goal or not, right? And we didn't metric any of this.
No, but we did, and we can pull up the minutes. We talked about this before. We've talked about it multiple times. And the point is, how do we whittle this down to make our why, which is every student can have right now internet to do anything, their math grades come up, and that the parents can have access to the websites and all that. Like, I know Ginger has a plan, but I feel like we have like this huge plethora of information on both these documents, but no real, yes, we're hitting it, no, we're not. We just have all this stuff that we want to do and none of it gets done.
That's
It's
my
like,
comment about the metric. There's no metric here that says, yes, you're hitting it, or no, you're not.
right. So instead of rewriting one of these, can we add a metric like piece in that with that?
Well, if you go to your retreat pack, that's the page that Renee presented, and Steve Kelly presented it for the last 2 years before that, where there's 4 sets of columns,
Right. And
the last one is metric.
And I'm looking at our school board goals 2019, 2020.
Mhm.
You guys see that piece? And I'm reading down the sign, measurement, evidence of accomplishment. There's board role, goal, measurement of evidence and accomplishment.
But they're not really metrics when I read them,
Mhm.
right? They're just really just another way of stating the goal.
So do we just need to get rid
Like,
of these?
it's here, it says the board will receive feedback, right? That's not a metric, right?
Well, my feedback on this is that you're
Either-
both saying the same thing, and you're both correct. And what we haven't done is taken something and really flesh it out. And what that includes is, when it comes around to setting the budget for next year, you have to make sure that budgeting is done on these topics. That you ask the question, so where in the budget is the money that supports these activities? You have to fund it. And when you're making decisions about a budget and shifting how you're spending the money, you have to understand what can no longer be done as a result of pursuing the new goals. So, that's been part of the issue is we've set goals, but we really haven't, 1, set the metrics, and 2, set the budget to make sure that the money's there for that to happen.
And this is, and I'm gonna, sorry, but drag Heidi into this comment here, but Heidi and I, when we were rolling, just complained and talked about the fact that if we don't budget for a communications director, right, how do we expect to improve communication with our community, right? If we don't put more resources to the problem we say is number 1, are we really doing anything? It's kind of like what we say in equity. If you don't have a line item for equity work in your school district, are you just words, or are you really investing in equity? If we're going to say communication, then we need to tell the superintendent to put more resources and put a chunk of the budget into that and make that happen.
And you have to make
right?
sure that when we set the
Yes.
budget, that it's in there, and you have to ask,
And just
where's the money for this?
demand that. And it's going to cause some ripple effect in our contract negotiations. It might cause some hard feelings. It'll do this and that, but that's our goal, and that's what we have to invest in. We have to say we're putting money to this and take our lumps for it, right? But make it happen.
Well, the last workshop, not this year, but the previous year, we had the same exact discussion. And the year before that, we had the same exact discussion.
Because we didn't pass a budget that put resources to solving the problem.
Because it was brought to us that it wasn't needed. It's obviously a need. So where can we go from here to make it a priority?
I don't know who told you that it wasn't needed.
Heidi and I were talking about how we're looking at all kinds of ways to try and make it happen.
Yeah.
Right.
So in the budget, then, so at the next board meeting in November, do we just make an action item, or do I send an email with an agenda saying we have to have this?
No, we just say it's a priority, and we will make a request of Linda while she's starting to form next year's budget of what we're trying to, the goal that you've set for the district, what the district's trying to accomplish. We'll need to pencil out and start looking for how much money it's going to cost and ask Linda to include that in her budget. And then she can give us information about how that will impact the budget, given everything else that's going on. And then we can make decisions from there.
I mean, as a small district, we can make a, just kind of give direction as a consensus of the board. If we were in a big district, we would make a resolution that we're going to commit a chunk of our budget and put it in front of the public and have a vote that says we are committing dollars to improving communications and bringing in a communications director. And it would be a resolution that the board would all vote on and say, okay, are we committing these dollars or not? And that would go to as a resolution to the superintendent and saying, this is the board's voice. In a small district like ours, we could do that by consensus, right? But that's the deal, right?
Right. So is this the same way that Lake Oswego set forth a resolution in order to send an email to the governor regarding school closure? Is this the same sort of resolution?
That's a resolution just saying what the board's opinion is, and then they asked the soup to, because the soup was already on board with that, right? So nobody comes to the board with a no vote. Well, you shouldn't, right? So, I mean, that's already been decided by the soup, that, yeah, if you guys back me up on this, we'll do that. And along comes a resolution written by one of the board members that's proposed to the other board members.
So same sort of thing.
Yes, right. And for budgeting and district allocations and things like that. Yeah. So, and the Ben Lapine made a resolution that said the superintendent will improve equity outcomes for their district, period. Right. That to me was kind of shaky because it didn't actually give any directions on what to measure or how to achieve, not achieve, but how to measure that focus. But again, you're telling your soup in a board resolution, this is our opinion, this is our voice of the board, this is what we want to see happen.
And I think when you're committing, when you're making a resolution like that, what you're saying is that you're also equally taking ownership for it. So like
Correct.
Communication goal, everyone has a part in that communication goal. It's not just the superintendent and Linda and everyone,
So you saw in my draft of the equity resolution that the board was committing. I had 4 items there as whys. Why are we doing equity? The board commits to listening. The board commits to making change. Those were your whys. That's what a resolution is about. It's a board voice on why. You don't micromanage. You don't specifically say, I want this, this, and this. You state your whys, and that goes to the soup to implement a system that achieves your why.
Right. And so that brings me back to this 5-year goal plan that we've been working on since 2019 and before then. How do we get to the point, and maybe we should just do our board goals as a resolution? Because I'm wondering, how do we get to the point where it's direct and we have metrics? And because when I read down creating a 5-year plan to raise achievement in mathematics in every school, like We are going to get some data regarding attendance and CDL that we talked about in our workshop and their grades, but right now we don't have any way to really measure if our kids are struggling. All we have is that we have, parents who are crying and asking for math tutors. So, you see how this is? It seems like a disconnect between our board goals and actually being successful and making an impact. Does that make sense?
Back to your first sentence, your board goals should be passed by resolution, because that puts it to a public vote that says the board wants these goals, right? And you have a
Right.
public vote on it. So yes, you make goals, you should adopt those goals as a resolution to have a public vote that says tells the public this is what we want for our district, right? As far as how to metric and do those things, this is where the board should ask questions of the experts that they hire, not just the soup, but the entire admin team, to get the people who are educated in these systems to say, how do we get a metric that satisfies our needs, right? The board itself should not be doing those metrics. We should be approving what the professionals who have studied this come to us and say, this is what we think should happen, and adjust it, adapt it, but take it. But we are not the ones who went to get our masters and doctorates in education. We hire people to do that, and we should listen to them.
So Bill,
Speaking against collaborative government, though, I just want to bring that up.
Yep.
Bill,
Heidi,
to
or
that
sorry,
point, in looking at this green and white mission page, I looking at this, I see it through a whole new light, and I think that, for instance, creating a 5-year plan to raise achievement in mathematics in every school, that should not be our goal.
right? I agree.
That is that's not a goal that we should have. That's what that's a day-to-day operation.
Yes, I agree. We need to stay with our board level work, but let me call on Jason. I just realized Jason has his hand up.
Well, Bill, you comment that we should rely on experts for this stuff, but I've been, math scores have been a problem since I was in school, since when Heidi was in school, and they still can't figure it out. So I think we're just venting our frustrations to the process, and we say we want certain things done, and then rely on experts, and then our kids are going to be school board members going, well, I remember when I was a kid, and math sucked when I was there. It does.
But we need to root cause that, as engineers, to say, is it our systems that's constraining our experts, or do our experts need more training? Because my initial gut reaction is that our systems of law, and I'm talking about state government, I'm not talking about our board, right? But the system constrains our experts from actually doing what they need to do to be successful, right? And we need to remove those constraints. We need to find ways to get those constraints out of our local school system and make it happen.
Well, and that's where I think as a board, we should, we have to come up with ideas, and, like my ideas is, have the high school kids come down and be tutors to the younger kids.
We're working on that, by the way.
And then give them credit for it.
Yep. And we're putting that system together. Well, that's exactly the kind of things we're going around to do that.
I haven't heard anything. I just made the suggestion once, but I'd never heard any follow-up or where it was at.
Yeah, when you say we're doing that, Bill, who's doing that?
I'm doing that a little bit, and Big Brother Big Sister's doing that right now. We just had our meeting this morning. That's why I was over at the school. FBLA team is working on that with ASB.
You do know
there's a lot going on, right? Sorry, couldn't hear you, Crystal. I was talking.
The kids actually aren't in school.
No, these would be online, and we're going through some of the online technical systems. So, we just had a little bit of a misunderstanding just last Thursday, that we're kind of working out the technical glitches on that. That wasn't a glitch, by the way. That was just a total misunderstanding. But, these are things that now the needs are there, and we're working on that. We're also working on that on NMSD, the service team is bringing together for that. We have a group at the airport that has a hangar with Wi-Fi that tables and heat and bathrooms that said they're willing to open that space up if people can get there to use for Wi-Fi access. A lot of community engagement here, right?
I guess I get confused, Bill, when you say we, I don't know which hat you're wearing.
Oh,
When you
yeah.
say we.
You know, that's me working with the education system in the state, you know, and then bringing it back to North Marion and trying to get community
So
work.
think-
And the
Go ahead, Crystal.
goals, going back to board goals,
Mhm.
what is our purpose and where are we trying to go from here? Because for me, I am extremely frustrated that the last, years that we've put into these, it doesn't really reflect that we've even processed or made improvement anywhere, to me personally. And granted, part of that's COVID-19, but a lot of it isn't. And so if this is not working, then scrap it and let's figure out something simple with a resolution that can give us some clear collaborative governance. I mean, I want the community members to come because the community members are going to tell you their geometry students are crying consistently and that people are hiring tutors all the time. And that then feeds into the equity piece because the students that can't afford tutors aren't receiving that additional help. So that's where I'm coming from. I want to figure out, instead of just writing a plan that sounds good and looks pretty, let's get something that we can strive to accomplish to give our students more value and make them successful.
Totally. I mean, there's obviously no debate on that comment, right? That's clearly the right idea.
So how do we get there?
Well, I'm wondering, like I know that they're in year 2 of the professional development that is that foundational piece for all staff to be able to raise achievement in math. So I know that's still going on even in a COVID environment. But when it comes to the frustration, I think I get it because the board is supposed to be operating at the policy level. And what we're missing is how is the board making sure that we have the policies in place and that we've implemented them well in order to accomplish these goals? Because sometimes we get distracted by the activities that are going on and focusing on the activities rather than on the policies and the measures of progress, those metrics that you were talking about. So we're not able to see it. And we get confused. So it's like we have to decide what level we're working at. Because if we're working at the 30,000 foot level in policies, we need to keep our eyes on that ball and work to improve that. Because that's the board goal. And then
I'm going to tell you really quick, Ginger, I've never seen a policy come across my desk that has to do with math.
yeah,
That's a
actually
problem.
you may have and not recognized it because if you're looking for a certain thing and it has to look a certain way and the thing actually looks different at the 30,000 foot level, you might miss it. But we can look at those. I mean, so that's the idea of picking one thing to work on. Like, are we going to work on communications and focus a lot of energy there and let this math thing continue because it's already on a path, it's going? Or do you want to spend a lot of time looking at the policies for one, the hiring, the induction, the professional development, and the evaluation of teachers? Do you want to look at the instructional materials process?
Well, in the 2019, 2020, we had equity, math, and communications as our 3 main goals.
Yeah. And, but were you looking at the policies for those things or did you want to see the stuff?
Yeah.
I mean,
Let
that's
me
what
pause.
I'm saying.
Let me pause this for a minute. Heidi has her hand up. Heidi.
I can't even remember now. I was going to say that's.
No.
So anyway, it's a
I
thought.
think that this is a really tricky. It's because we really, if we're concerned about kids who aren't having equitable outcomes because they don't have access to Wi-Fi, then that's where we go to the budgeting piece and we say, maybe we need to budget more money towards making that happen. But it's not our job to say, well, we need to come up with a plan for parents and students to get, I mean, that's not our job, right? That's something where we direct our
Yeah.
superintendent, she goes and sets up that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't even want to develop, I'm tired of developing board goals in a vacuum where we just kind of like, you know, oh, this sounds good to me. We need to sit down with staff and community and develop goals that are all related and connected.
And that's why I love collaborative governance, Heidi, is that's exactly what needs to happen.
Well, I think you need a new strategic plan as well. So that's a full-on community process. And that's another goal. And again, if you're going to do one thing and do it well, pick one thing.
You need to market it to the target market, right, of where you're trying to solve. Because if your goal is to solve world hunger, you ain't going to achieve it, right? You need to pick something that's within your grasp
And
of what you can control.
Until city governments
Mhm.
and state and county provide the infrastructure for broadband to every community and make that a utility, where if you don't install it, you're denying people access. Schools can't solve that problem. We can put in as many spots as we want, but there are some areas where hotspots do not work. So, and there's nothing we can do about that.
That's an advocacy issue, not
and
a
that's
school budget issue.
right. It's not just a school issue. It's a much larger issue. And yeah, I mean, there's just so many parts of that, but again, what is that? And that's the level that I work at. Is like, I move up to that policy level. We have a inequitable access issue that is statewide and it cannot be solved by schools. And it cannot be solved by the government. It has to be solved by interagency agreements, basic standards for what kind of access each community should have, and at minimum standards so that it happens. Going back to the old co-ops. I mean, you know, I live in a place where we're on co-op and I love it. And it works really well. And whenever there's new homes built, we pull in fiber optic. That's part of the commitment to the community. So it's, you know, it's a big issue. And yeah, I want to solve those kind of problems too, but some of them get solved at a much higher level. And if you focus there, then you can actually fill in the details underneath, but you have to start at that level and make sure that you're looking at it from that level.
But some of the things that are available for us to solve or within our grasp, there's plenty of them. And, you know, for instance, I advocated when we were doing the Student Success Act that we set up a full-on valid academic performing summer school program, which really helps our poor families, really helps our families and students to stay engaged, right? And before we passed the Student Success Act, I was heavily advocating for summer school programs. We need more kid contact days, right? And that was my personal opinion, right? But there are things like that can be done by our district, and there's a lot more of them. That's not one. That's one of 100 things that we can do, right? And we need to just come up with that and say, okay, how do we improve our student outcomes? Which one gives us the biggest bang for the buck?
Yeah.
So what
Right?
is our consensus today about these goals? It's on our agenda. Are we going to do this in a workshop? Or are we going to wait and do it in some kind of collaborative environment when we can do that?
Well, I heard two things. One, we're going to get facilitation help to get on the road to collaborative governance. And it's a pathway. You don't just snap your fingers and there you are, right? But let's get on the pathway for getting that engaged, that concept of how we rule our district engaged as soon as possible and work towards it. The second thing I heard was that we shred this document that we're staring at on the screen and come up with a really boiled down, you know, couple things that we want to see happen. Could be community work, and then we fund it. And then we find a way to fund it to ensure that'll happen, and we find a way to measure it to validate that it was right.
Yeah.
You know, for
Because-
me, summer school, when we do the testing in October, the summer slide should go 50% or more away. That's a measurement that I say, yep, look at that, right? That's me, right? But now everybody else should have their own idea.
Well, and
An
if we do a
advocate for it.
strategic plan, that is sort of collaborative governance, a strategic plan.
Correct.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, setting a goal that will develop a strategic plan will kind of, you know, that would be something that could get us there. Okay,
Yeah.
that's enough. I'm like, we're in 2 hours into this.
So I think what I'll bring back to Glenn is that we'll work on a much more engaged discussion with Renee on how we get on the pathway and moving the ball forward on collaborative governance. She will be extremely happy to get at that level with the school board, because that's where she really wants to be. And then that will take us down the path of getting mission statements and goals. I think, you know, from the current point of view, we'll just keep the current agreements that we have in play until we come up with better ones. Is that a
Yeah.
fair statement? Rather than try and adapt them partially and then discard them later, we'll just keep those in play.
Yeah, because we're still working on equity, math, and communications. That's
Yeah.
like the three big glaring
Yeah.
pieces in our life.
And I was anxiously before COVID waiting to see how this new math program that Sherry Stroud installed and got all the teachers engaged in to see just how that would play out. Unfortunately, COVID put an end to that hope, right? But anyhow, that's enough.
Deferred. It's not ended. They're still.
Okay,
working.
I know it's not ended. It just, I
It
was
is
really hoping for
deferred
some
and
good
you'll
feedback.
vote on that.
It's poor Sherry. It's deferred with an extended summer. Extended summer.
So,
Well, you know, maybe we need to do what Lake Oswego did, because the best thing we can do for our kids and best thing we can do for equity right now is just to get everybody back in school.
but we need to, again, play it safe. You gotta roll with what OHA is saying.
I'm with
Right.
you, Heidi. If you would like that agenda topic to be on our business meeting where we talk about a resolution, you have my 100% support in that. Because I really feel like it's going to take more than Lake Oswego and several other of the school districts to speak up.
Did you guys get my letter today?
Yes. My fear on that is that we are struggling in our county. We're the worst county in the state this week.
Yeah, so we have to move cautiously.
Yeah.
But I want to also say in that, I got the third notification of suicide today of a person I know.
Yeah.
So I'll just keep that in the background.
Yeah. There's lots of factors here.
Yep.
Right. But-
Ginger, what letter are you talking about? Is it an email?
Yeah, she sent an email she sent a letter to staff and sent us a copy of the letter. It's an attachment to an email from Ginger.
Yeah, for Agnes and I, we're starting to process. I spend Saturdays and Sundays now waiting for information from the local health authority. Just
Yeah.
to figure out what I have to do on Monday.
We
I
have
didn't- I
COVID
didn't get
cases
that.
here in
Just read
Aurora.
the letter.
Yeah.
Well,
We have COVID here in Aurora now.
It's normal now. That's my,
Yeah.
that's what, weekends, we wait for the metrics to be processed and the tracers to do their work, and then the information comes to us. Then we have to process and figure out what to do. And yeah, that's just kind of the routine right now.
Well, I'm still not against a resolution because I'm looking at the whole United States. So Heidi, if you want it on the agenda, send me an email. I'll second it.
Who's writing it? Or what are you saying? Just that we want to write one or write a resolution?
Yeah,
or
I'll back Heidi to have that on the next agenda.
well, I meant what is the agenda item?
I don't know. I haven't even read Lake Oswego's. I don't know what I'm talking about. So let me do some research. I'll
Yeah.
get back to you on that.
Heidi, I'll talk to you offline.
Okay.
All right, as
Victor,
Heidi pointed
I did
out,
not get that email, so if you could resend that to us, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't receive it either, although I did see a copy.
And I will, Heidi, I'll send you the resolutions that have been passed by other districts right now, so that you have a couple to look at.
all right, to be honest, at 8:10 right now, I'm just going to open any other matters from anybody. I can see all your hands now. Anybody want to raise a hand on any other matter?
I have one last thing that I just want to commend our staff and everybody who's working diligently to become masters of Canvas. I've had to reach out a couple times and they really do try to get right back to you regarding even if it's a homeroom teacher or random teachers or anything. And as we struggle through it, I just commend the students, the parents, and the staff for working hard to be successful even under very difficult circumstances.
Yes, our staff are working like they've never worked before. I mean, it's, the stress is showing. We are concerned about them. I've asked the principals to keep in constant contact with staff and make sure that they have is everything they could possibly want or need, in the way of feeling like if they just need a break, we'll have a way to help them. These are very difficult times, and they are doing cartwheels to reach out to staff. To families and to help. So we're very blessed to have this staff. It's a good group of people.
Okay, with that said, I hear a little silence, so I am going to call for adjournment. All right, and say thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for
And
great work.
we have a
Seth.
mission statement for next month. So,
Thank
all right,
you. Bye.
bye.
Bye.